Good evening and welcome to Monday Night Politics Meet the Candidates, presented by the Dallas Examiner. The Dallas Examiner has presented Monday Night Politics Meet the Candidates for over 12 consecutive years before major elections. Monday Night Politics Meet the Candidates is a series of forums, not debates, but forums designed to inform the community of the qualifications, experiences, and platforms of candidates for elected office. Our sponsors are nonprofit organizations. You can view the forums on www.dallasexaminer.com and Facebook Live. Also, you can view it on the Dallas Examiner app. Tonight, and well, rather for this series of forums, our moderator is Charles O'Neill. Charles is president of the Texas Association of African American Chambers of Commerce. He was the first editor of the Dallas Examiner and was here when my father started the paper in 37 years ago. Again, I want to thank you for attending Monday Night Politics and thank you for your support.
Welcome back to this segment of Monday Night Politics, brought to you by the Dallas Examiner. Tonight we have Diane Catherine Jones,
Yes.
Candidate for Dallas County Court at Law number 4. Welcome. Good back to see you. We did see you again, as you mentioned, during the primary, and you vanquished your opponent and now are in the thick of a race for this seat.
Yes, thank you. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So we've just had a conversation with another judge. Tell us about what your perspective is on the bench that you're running for, Dallas County Court at Law number 4. It is a civil court.
Yes, it
It is
is.
a civil court, and the typical case is a
Most of the cases they have in that court are civil litigation. And when we say civil litigation, we're talking about car accidents, medical malpractice, contract disputes, things of that nature. But we're also the appellate courts for the JP courts.
okay.
So if somebody goes to trial in JP court and they don't like their ruling, they can do what's called a de novo appeal. And when they do a de novo appeal, it's like starting all the way over.
Okay.
It's like they get another start over. And then they come to our courts and we review those cases. So then that's when we get into eviction cases and small claims, transactions, things of that nature.
Okay. So what have you found as you've campaigned, the level of awareness of the critical nature of your court among most folk that you interact with?
I think what you'll find is the average person may not understand the dynamics of the courts themselves, but you know the lawyers know, and all the lawyers have have family, as well as people who've been in the system, you know, who've been sued or had a car accident or had a medical malpractice issue or things of that nature, or been evicted. Then they're familiar with the courts and they understand the judicial process, or they learn it as they go. Most people learn it as they go. They don't necessarily know about it until they actually are in the trenches and going through the process.
And so I don't think there's a pecking order, but there's a county court at Law number 1, 2, 3, 4. Is the workload distributed evenly, or are you going to hear more cases than the judge say in county court at Law number 2? How's that?
Well, my understanding, it's almost like a will system. Cases get filed in the county clerk's office, and the clerks distribute the cases, and they just go randomly in order, giving them to the different judges. There's 5 county court at law courts in Dallas County. Goes from 1 to 5. And they randomly get assigned.
Okay.
You know, the real issue becomes is disposing of those cases, because if you don't dispose of them, then of course your caseload can get larger and larger and larger. And of course there's also, like, you may get a real complex case which might take longer to get disposed of than someone who might get something that is not as complex. So those things would have effect on the docket as well.
Okay. I just wonder, because we were talking earlier that folk again, don't understand so that's kind of the way I'm asking these questions. There are people who don't understand what county courts at law do. So what is if there is anything that could be described as typical, what would you expect to find in a court?
Well, in a court, you're going to, of course, find a judge, a bailiff, a court reporter. Yes, yours. You have a judge, a bailiff, a court reporter, and as well as a coordinator who is responsible for instructing and organizing the court and the docket and making sure all the evidence or the cases are set for trial and things of that nature. Also, what you'll have with regard to the court is different kind of hearings. You have different proceedings in those courtrooms, like motion hearings and things of that nature.
Okay, we have been joined by Judge Candidate Jones's opponent in this race by Jessica Lewis, who is a candidate also for Dallas County Court at Law number 4. We were just talking about the court and how it does its business. What is it, in your experience, that makes you the prime candidate for Dallas County Court at Law number 4?
Yes, and Diane, I apologize. Were you finished
Okay, I'm
for? Would you like me to speak into this or this? Just this one.
Very good.
Yeah, I apologize for the confusion there. I have just to preface being here. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here, and I apologize for my tardiness. And I am very excited about being on the ballot again this year. I have, if you find my name familiar, I have run for judicial office before, and one of my focuses in running for this particular office is ultimately encouraging engagement in public service. And I think a lot of folks, if you make it to the bottom of your ballot, are not seeing a lot of contested races, and I think that it's really important. And so I chose to run for this particular bench because County Court of Law is a number 4 is a courtroom that I interned in a long time ago. I knew a former judge that had sat on this bench, and I greatly admired the way that he operated the courtroom. And so watching that, and then being an attorney since then, and practicing, I feel very equipped to run and rule in this courtroom in these cases. But the choosing of this particular bench just was really that personal tie from being there previously.
I moved from behind the light because y'all gonna have this dismembered voice asking you, where is that coming from? So
it's a little angelic, yeah.
It's one of the awkward things about the judicial system, as we've come to learn it, is partisan election of judges. I want both of you to answer this question, and we'll go first to you, Ms. Jones. Ms. Jones, what is it about Democratic justice versus Republican justice in a civil court? How would you address that question?
Well, first of all, Lady Justice has a blindfold on her face. And justice is supposed to be blind. And when you administer justice, you're supposed to follow the law and the rules that are before you as a judge. As a result of that, when you talk about Democratic versus Republican, the reality is if people are ruling correctly, those things should not come into play. Mm-hmm. However, we all have implicit biases, and we have different ways of thinking, we have different experiences, and all those do impact the way we rule. It doesn't mean that we won't rule fairly or follow the law. But, I was raised in the military. I lived all over the world. I've know people from every race, color, nationality. I've traveled all over the world. I've been to China, India, Tibet, Africa, you name it. And what you'll find is when people come in your courtroom, they come with their experiences and having to understand. So you might be listening to a case and listening to a witness testify about something that if you have an implicit bias or don't understand the people, you may not understand why they did what they did. So that does come into play, and I do believe my background helps me to be able to understand people when it comes to ruling and presiding over cases. But all of these people, hopefully, most of them will have attorneys. A lot of times they don't. They have to represent themselves, and that could be a scary experience. And as a result of that, you know, we all just want to make sure that everyone who comes in our courtroom are treated with respect and dignity, and that they have access to legal services, and they have access to the courtroom where they'll be treated fairly.
Okay. Ms. Lewis?
Yes. I think I would point to everything that Diane just mentioned. I use a different term, I think, worldview. Like everyone brings their worldview into the courtroom. And there is a difference in today's current political climate. You know, you say there probably is a difference between a Democrat worldview, Republican worldview. But there's a lot of diversity within people that take those labels. And I think that can often be discounted as we both seek to run to our polar opposites and paint people on the other side of a certain, with a label. But there is something that comes with that label. And so the way that our Texas judiciary is selected is through elections. And so by being willing to put a label on you to run, that probably speaks something to your worldview. It also might speak something to just knowing the way that politics works, right? And particularly here in Dallas County, there's been various waves of judges, of Republican judges, Democrat judges, and there are a lot of folks that they take on the label simply because they would be a good judge, and that's the means for getting there. And so I think that there's something to be learned from the label, but I think it's more important to focus on who the person is. And I also think it's important that these races are contested, and that we have people on some options for choices, which you don't see that much. So it might be just more people being willing to put on that label and run in a partisan race, even though we don't get overtly political in judicial races.
That's a relief to hear both of your responses, because clearly Dallas Examiner viewers and readers, not totally a black audience, but our experience in the courtroom or in the court setting is very different from everyone else's in a broad brush painting. And so we get a little more anxious when we go to court, and friendly faces mean a lot to and so the partisan nature of Texas election of judges might send the wrong signal. And I asked Ms. Jones earlier about what her experience is as she has been on the campaign. Have you detected a broader understanding of the role of a county court at law judge among those folk that you interact with on the campaign trail?
So I would say that a lot of folks just don't pay attention to judicial races as much as they should. Right? They get excited about the races where people, the candidates, can say the slogans, get into the partisan issues that get people fired up. And so often there's just some education that has to be done as to the role of the judge, the fact that our judges are elected, the fact that we can't, as judicial candidates, get into some of these hot button issues, particularly when they might show up in cases that before our courts, and our speaking to them could potentially influence or make it appear that our viewpoints are going to influence our decisions. And so there's just a lot of education, I think, on that. And I think a lot of people, for good reason, don't necessarily know a lot of the inner workings of the court, and they don't want to, and I don't blame them, because they like to just be able to go about their day to day and their business and not be have to go into court for, because that means that a conflict, a dispute, has not been able to be resolved outside of court. And so a lot of me being out and speaking with people has been encouraging them to look at these races as something that they should pay attention to, that who they select as a judge for our courts here in Dallas County is important, and is important because you can't control if whether one day you will be in front of one. And just if you care about our society, which in our local communities, you would want justice to be attainable, accessible, be able to trust that the judges that are on the bench are not partisans, but ultimately care about the rule of law and seeking truth in their courtroom.
So here's your chance to look right into the camera, talk to the voters that are listening to Dallas Examiner's readers and listeners, appealing for their vote. Ms. Lewis and then Ms. Jones.
Thank you. So I am Jessica Lewis. If you want to learn a little bit more about me, I'd love for you to go to Lewis for Dallas, LEWISFORDALLAS.com to learn a little bit more about why I'm in this race and why I care about these races as a whole, and this one in particular in our civil courts. I have the resume, I have the experience to be on the bench. Ultimately, though, I'm in this race because I believe that we have a calling to serve our communities, that we should seek the welfare of our city. And so often we get focused and tunnel vision on our day-to-day, and sometimes that's all we can handle, and that's understandable. But sometimes that calling comes around to step up and serve our communities. I'm particularly equipped to serve in the judiciary because that's what God has blessed me with in providing me and leading me through law school and through years of various years, and you can learn more about it on the website of my experience in the legal field, to be able to be that person to resolve the conflicts that you would hope could be resolved outside of the courtroom, but sometimes must be there. And we want those courts to be balanced and fair, and we want them to be places where truth is sought, and that power and resources do not dictate the outcome. And that is something that I feel passionate about and will adhere to if on the bench. And so I ask for your vote, and just welcome questions and interaction if you have more interest in either serving in public service or about this bench in particular, about me for this role, any of those things. Please go to lewisfordallas.com to learn more.
Thank you so much. Ms. Jones.
And I just want to thank everyone who watches this show tonight or watches it later. I'm Diane Jones. I'm your candidate for County Court at Law Number 4. And I am the most qualified person for this bench, and that's why I'm asking you to vote for me. I have 32 years of experience. I started in the district attorney's office in 1989 under John Vance. I was a prosecutor, then I became an assistant federal public defender for the Northern District of Texas. Then I was an assistant United States attorney for the Northern District of Texas under Paul Coggins. From there, I became the judge of County Court at Law Number 4. It was a family violence court, and I presided over cases for 7 years until I decided to run for a district court in Dallas County, the 194th Judicial District Court, where I lost my election. Since then, I've been practicing. I was in private practice for almost 15 years, where I defended people in federal court. I represented people in family court and handled civil litigation cases such as car accident cases. I was an ad litem on cases to make sure that children were being fairly compensated for their injuries. Then I became in-house counsel for several major corporations here in America. And my position is, you need good judges. I will be a good judge. I will be a hardworking judge. I will be there for the people. I will work every day. I've also been very involved in the community. I've served on Circle's 10 Boy Scouting Board for years with urban scouting and inner city scouting. I'm actively involved in my church. I'm an ordained elder and a minister. And I just believe that integrity matters, and it's so important that these courts have people of integrity on the bench that will rule fairly. If you're interested in more information, please go to my website. It's Diane Jones for Judge, and it's Diane with 2 N's. And I hope you vote for me, because I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you both, Diane Jones, and the Democratic candidate, and Ms. Jessica Lewis, Republican candidates for Dallas County Court at Law number 4. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yes.